Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Grandma Nikki's Ferrari is collided in Claire's drunk driving accident. Haley Aaron's character Claire Newman may be involved in a drunk driving incident in the future. Could Claire bring turmoil to the Newman clan by crashing Grandma Nikki Newman's Ferrari? We have to think about how far Claire might go since it's clear that she's not handling the drama with Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles. Since Claire had never been plastered before, she recently made the decision to get intoxicated, but this seems like a recipe for trouble. Claire's desire to purposefully gulp herself into a drunken oblivion is odd given Nikki's history of alcoholism. We understand Claire's desire to temporarily ignore her problems, but drinking isn't the solution. This is particularly relevant given that Y&R spoilers indicate Claire's problems won't be resolved anytime soon. While Kyle creates his own chaos with his plan to get Audra out of town, Audra's revenge plot is sure to produce even more chaos. Nathan Owens' character Holden Novak makes an effort to assist Claire in coping with everything, although it might not be very successful. Perhaps the bottom of as many Vespa glasses as Claire can manage is the only true solace she can find. To put it another way, one night of drinking could lead to another. Claire might start doing this on a regular basis and end up getting a drinking problem. If such is the case, Claire might come to regret whatever she does soon. If the Y&R authors want to carry this plot further, that might involve causing a drunk driving accident. The program has made reference to it in the conversation ever since Victor Newman gifted Nikki the unique Ferrari she had always desired. It seems possible that Ferrari will eventually play a significant role in a future plot. If that's true, there may be a situation in which Claire drives her grandmother's expensive vehicle. Without realizing her granddaughter is very inebriated, Nikki may text or contact Claire and urge her to drive it somewhere. Keep an eye out for any bad news that might be coming up for Claire since she might end up behind the wheel nevertheless and cause an accident. Claire Newman's journey on The Young and the Restless has already been filled with highs and lows, but the possibility of her spiraling into reckless behavior by getting drunk and crashing Nikki Newman's Ferrari adds an entirely new layer of danger and drama. Haley Aaron's portrayal of Claire has shown a woman desperate to prove herself, a woman eager to build trust with her powerful Newman relatives, but also someone who is still emotionally fragile after years of manipulation, trauma, and abandonment. The suggestion that Claire could turn to alcohol at this fragile moment in her life is not only an ironic callback to Nikki's own long struggle with alcoholism but also a haunting echo of the generational turmoil that often plagues Genoa City families. For Claire, who has never really been a drinker before, suddenly making the decision to drown her feelings in liquor seems like a recipe for heartbreak, scandal, and regret. The tension with Kyle Abbott, who is pressing her with proposals she doesn't feel ready for, along with Audra Charles' constant scheming, has left Claire feeling cornered. Nathan Owens' Holden Novak has tried to step into her life as a calming, stabilizing presence, but his efforts may not be enough to keep her grounded. When someone who's unaccustomed to alcohol suddenly gulps down glass after glass of Vespa martinis, it's easy to imagine that disaster could follow, especially in the world of soap operas where every decision has lasting, often devastating consequences. The irony of Claire turning to drinking is magnified when considering Nikki Newman's own history. Nikki, a survivor of alcoholism who has relapsed more than once, has fought for decades to control her destructive urges. Victor Newman has stood by her through countless trials, and her children have watched her stumble and rise again. For Nikki, who has worked so hard to rebuild her life, it would be a crushing blow to see her granddaughter mimic the very demons she has tried so hard to overcome. Adding insult to injury, the idea of Claire climbing behind the wheel of Nikki's prized Ferrari, a gift from Victor meant to symbolize love, status, and triumph, only to wreck it while intoxicated is a narrative steeped in Shakespearean tragedy. The Ferrari isn't just a car, it's a Newman trophy, a physical emblem of victory in both love and wealth. To have it destroyed by Claire in a drunken haze would be symbolic of the generational curse of self-destruction that continues to haunt the Newman dynasty. The seeds for such a storyline are already being sown subtly. Kyle Abbott has been relentless in pursuing Claire, perhaps out of genuine love or perhaps out of sheer obsession. His impulsive proposal, followed by Claire's angry outburst questioning whether he was about to demand children next, revealed just how emotionally frayed Claire is. She doesn't want to be controlled, she doesn't want to be rushed, and most of all, She doesn't want to be defined by someone else's timetable. Audra Charles, for her part, remains a looming threat, with a thirst for revenge and a knack for striking at the weakest moments of her rivals. If Claire finds herself battling both Kyle's pressure and Audra's games while also trying to navigate Holden Novak's earnest but perhaps misguided attempts to help, she may feel her only escape is to shut out the noise with alcohol. That one decision, to pour another drink, to chase another fleeting sense of numbness, could very well lead to a string of nights she doesn't remember, bad choices she can't undo, and ultimately, the catastrophe of sliding behind the wheel while drunk. What makes the prospect even more chilling is how unintentional it could all feel. Nikki, proud of her Ferrari, might call Claire one evening and ask her to pick it up, drop it off, or simply take it for a spin. Nikki might not realize her granddaughter is drunk, or she might assume Claire is capable of handling herself. Claire, wanting desperately not to disappoint her grandmother, could accept the keys and slide into the driver's seat, not realizing how impaired she truly is. Soap operas thrive on tragic irony, and this would be the perfect setup. Nikki unknowingly handing over her beloved car to her intoxicated granddaughter, only for the situation to end in twisted metal, flashing police lights, and family devastation. A single accident could unravel all of Claire's fragile progress toward acceptance in the Newman clan. From a storytelling perspective, this kind of plot would serve multiple arcs at once. It would test Nikki's sobriety, as watching Claire struggle with alcohol could easily trigger old cravings and guilt. It would deepen Victor Newman's eternal battle to control and protect his family, as he would likely lash out in fury at Claire for not only endangering herself but also tarnishing the Newman name and destroying his wife's gift. It would add tension to Kyle's story, as he might feel personally responsible for driving Claire to drink with his emotional pressure and overbearing affection. Audra could, of course, twist the knife by leaking news of the accident to the press, making sure that the scandal plays out not just within the Newman family but across Genoa City. And Holden Novak's role would be thrown into sharp relief. Was he supportive enough? Did he fail to see the warning signs? Could he save Claire from herself? If the writers wanted to drag the drama out even further, they could use the accident as a springboard for a long-term storyline about Claire's potential descent into alcoholism. A single drunken crash could be explained away as a mistake, but what if it wasn't an isolated event? What if, instead, it marked the beginning of a pattern? Claire might start relying on alcohol to numb the insecurities and betrayals she constantly faces. Instead of leaning on Holden or trying to mend her ties with Kyle, she could seek comfort at the bottom of a bottle. Over time, she might become increasingly reckless, secretive, and erratic, creating endless storylines as her family struggles to save her from herself. The Ferrari crash would then be remembered not just as a shocking incident but as the first domino in a much larger downfall. Of course, soap operas are also about redemption, and Claire's path doesn't have to end in ruin. The accident, if it happens, could become her wake-up call. Maybe no one dies. Maybe the Ferrari is the only casualty, but the guilt and humiliation could push Claire to seek help. Nikki, who has walked that dark path, could become her mentor, guiding her through sobriety and recovery. The irony of Nikki, a grandmother once defined by her weakness for alcohol, becoming the steady hand that saves her granddaughter from the same fate would be a poetic arc Victor might resist at first, too angry at the damage done. But even he could soften over time as he realizes that punishing Claire won't erase the pain, only support and love might. Still, fans of The Young and the Restless know that nothing is ever that simple. Even if Claire sought recovery, the fallout would linger. Kyle might withdraw from her completely, unable to forgive or forget. Holden might question whether he can handle the chaos that comes with loving Claire. And Audra, of course, would never let her live it down. The Ferrari crash would become Genoa City gossip, whispered about for years as one of the great Newman scandals. Every time a Newman walked into a room, someone might mutter about the night Claire wrecked her grandmother's prized car in a drunken stupor. That kind of stain doesn't wash away easily. In truth, the entire storyline fits seamlessly into the tapestry of Newman drama. The family has always been larger than life, always teetering between triumph and tragedy. Victor builds empires only to see them threatened by betrayal. Nikki fights her demons only to watch them re-emerge in new forms. Their children and grandchildren struggle to escape the long shadows cast by their parents. For Claire, The possibility of being the one who wrecks Nikki's Ferrari in a drunken accident perfectly captures the Newman legacy: privilege laced with pain, power poisoned by self-destruction, and love constantly tested by scandal. If the writers do decide to pull the trigger on this plot, the fallout would ripple across the canvas for months. Courtroom scenes could play out as Claire faces DUI charges. Hospital vigils could unfold if anyone is injured. Victor could launch a campaign to cover up the scandal while his enemies gleefully exploit it. The Abbott family could be drawn in as Kyle struggles with his guilt and the public connection between him and Claire. Holden could be pushed into the spotlight as the one person trying to defend Claire when the rest of Genoa City turns its back. And Nikki could be forced to confront not just her granddaughter's recklessness but also the painful reminder that alcoholism is never truly conquered. It lurks, waiting to strike again, sometimes through the next generation. Ultimately, whether the Ferrari is truly wrecked or just dangled as a future threat, the symbolism is too rich for Y&R writers to ignore. The car represents wealth, legacy, pride, and victory. To have it destroyed by Claire would be a metaphorical shattering of all those things, reminding viewers that in Genoa City, nothing gold can stay untouched by scandal. Claire's journey has only just begun, and the idea that her darkest chapter could start with one too many drinks and one terrible drive in her grandmother's Ferrari is exactly the kind of shocking, soapy twist that fans live for. If the young and the restless really chose to send Claire Newman down the dark path of drunk driving and colliding Nikki's Ferrari, the fallout would become one of those sweeping, long-arc storylines that reverberates across Genoa City for months, if not years. Imagine the night of the accident: police lights flashing, the screech of sirens, the twisted wreck of a red Ferrari gleaming under the streetlights, and Claire slumped behind the wheel, her world spinning as officers demand she take a breathalyzer. Perhaps she resists at first, panicking, insisting she's fine, only for the truth to come out that her blood alcohol content is well above the legal limit. That revelation alone would shock Nikki, who arrives at the scene horrified to see not only her granddaughter in handcuffs but also her cherished Ferrari smashed beyond recognition. Victor Newman, a man who has always prided himself on controlling narratives, would seethe as the press inevitably gets wind of the scandal. The image of a young Newman drunk at the wheel of a luxury car would practically write the headlines for them. Newman legacy tainted by drunken disaster. For Victor, who built his empire on reputation as much as wealth, this would feel like betrayal of the highest order. And for Nikki, who knows all too well the demons of addiction, the sight of Claire echoing her own mistakes would cut deeper than any car crash ever could. The legal drama that follows would be intense. Claire, though never a hardened criminal, would suddenly find herself facing DUI charges and possibly even reckless endangerment if another vehicle or pedestrian was caught up in the collision. The courtroom scenes could become a pivotal arena where the Newmans attempt to flex their power. Victor might try to silence the scandal by hiring the best legal minds to argue Claire down to probation or community service, while others in Genoa City accuse him of using his influence to protect his granddaughter from real accountability. Jack Abbott could step in with his own opinion, especially if Kyle blames himself for pushing Claire into this spiral. Ashley and Billy might gossip about the hypocrisy of the Newmans trying to sweep everything under the rug. Phyllis, never one to miss a chance to pounce, might even plant stories in the press about how the Newman name has once again become synonymous with corruption. The trial itself could stretch over weeks, with Holden Novak perhaps taking the stand as a character witness, trying to argue that Claire is a good woman who just made one tragic mistake. His testimony could either help Claire by showing her humanity or backfire by exposing the full extent of her drinking in recent weeks, making it clear this wasn't just one random incident but rather the beginning of a dangerous pattern. The emotional fallout within the Newman family would be even more explosive. Nikki would blame herself in part, feeling that by celebrating her Ferrari and allowing Claire access to it, she had unwittingly enabled the disaster. The car, meant to symbolize joy and victory, would become a symbol of guilt and grief. Her own sobriety would be threatened as she wrestled with the temptation to drink again under the weight of shame. Victor, meanwhile, would lash out at everyone. At Claire for her recklessness, at Nikki for her supposed softness, at Kyle for his emotional games that destabilized Claire, and at Holden for not preventing it. He would thunder about protecting the Newman legacy, but his anger might only push Claire further away. Nick and Victoria, as seasoned Newman children, would have their own takes. Nick might want to shield Claire, remembering his own history of mistakes, while Victoria might be harsher, reminding everyone that the Newmans can't afford to let another scandal destroy their public image. Adam, the eternal black sheep, might use the situation to his advantage, subtly reminding Victor that Claire isn't perfect either and perhaps suggesting that the Newmans shouldn't treat her as a golden child when her flaws are laid bare. For Claire herself, the consequences would be brutal. Facing the humiliation of mugshots in the tabloids, the whispers of her peers, and the cold disappointment of her grandmother, she would be forced to confront not only the accident but the emotional wreckage behind it. She might initially lash out, insisting she doesn't need help, that everyone else drove her to drink, that Kyle's obsession and Audra's schemes cornered her into this breakdown. But in her quieter moments, Claire would begin to see the truth, that she is teetering on the edge of the same pit that consumed Nikki for years. The fear of becoming her grandmother, broken, drunk, and ashamed, might finally push her to accept responsibility. Yet accepting responsibility doesn't come without cost. She might lose Kyle completely, who, despite caring for her, cannot reconcile his feelings with her self-destruction. Audra, of course, would weaponize the accident, gleefully pointing out that Claire isn't the innocent little Newman darling after all, but rather a liability waiting to explode. Even Holden, loyal as he is, might find himself questioning whether he can truly save Claire if she doesn't want to be saved. The ripple effect could stretch far beyond Claire's personal circle. Genoa City as a whole thrives on scandal, and this one would become the talk of every household. Crimson lights would buzz with speculation, society would echo with whispers, and Chancellor Winters might even debate pulling away from Newman collaborations to avoid the taint of bad press. Jill Abbott, never one to miss a chance to criticize Victor, might declare publicly that the Newmans have lost control of their family, dragging their once mighty name through the mud. Sharon, always the voice of compassion, could try to reach out to Claire, reminding her that redemption is possible, but even Sharon's words might not be enough if Claire isn't ready to listen. The most compelling aspect of the storyline, however, would be whether the Ferrari accident is just the beginning. If the writers truly want to lean into Claire's descent, they could craft a long arc in which she continues to struggle with alcohol, even after the trial. Maybe she tries to sober up, attending meetings and leaning on Nikki, only to relapse in moments of weakness. Perhaps one relapse leads to an even more devastating incident, like putting another person's life in danger or sabotaging her own career prospects. Holden might find himself exhausted, unsure how to love someone who keeps slipping away, while Kyle might use her downfall as an excuse to draw closer to Audra again, creating another messy triangle. Each misstep would not only define Claire's story but also test the strength of the Newman family itself. Will they truly rally around her, or will they treat her as a scapegoat to protect the empire? Yet, even amid all the chaos, there lies the potential for redemption. If Claire does eventually confront her addiction and accept help, she could emerge stronger, more independent, and finally free from the chains of both her past trauma and the Newman legacy's impossible expectations. A rehab storyline could provide her with new allies, perhaps introducing fresh characters or bringing back familiar faces who understand the battle with addiction. The idea of Nikki and Claire standing side by side, both survivors of alcohol's grip, could be one of the most powerful generational arcs in Y&R history. For Nikki, helping her granddaughter succeed where she once failed would be the ultimate triumph. For Claire, finally proving she's more than a victim of circumstance would cement her place not just in the Newman family but in the larger canvas of Genoa City. Still, no redemption arc would erase the Ferrari accident. That crash, with its screeching brakes and shattering glass, would forever be etched into the Newman family's history. Much like Victor's endless feuds, Nikki's battles with sobriety, and Adam's betrayals, it would become one of those defining moments that fans remember for years. Every time the Newmans gather, someone might glance at Claire and recall the night she nearly destroyed herself, and Nikki's prized possession, because of one terrible choice. That's the beauty of soap storytelling. Even when characters grow and change, the past always lingers, ready to resurface at the worst possible time. And perhaps that's where the real drama lies, not just in the immediate crash, the courtroom, or the family arguments, but in the long shadow such an event would cast. Claire may one day be forgiven, she may one day move forward, but the Ferrari will never be the same, and neither will she. The car will be rebuilt or replaced, but the metaphor of shattered metal reflecting a shattered legacy will linger. The Newmans will continue to fight, love, and betray, as they always do, but in hushed tones, they will remember the night Claire Newman proved that no matter how gilded the cage, the demons inside it can still destroy everything. If the Ferrari crash storyline carried forward, the long-term ripple effect could transform Claire Newman into one of the Young and the Restless' most complicated characters. The Genoa City Police Department might treat the DUI as a wake-up call. But the truth is that the press and the public wouldn't let Claire off so easily. Every time her name appeared in headlines, it would be tied to the crash. Even months later, business competitors might throw the scandal in Victor Newman's face, reminding him that his family name, once untouchable, had been dragged through the mud by his own granddaughter. Victor, never one to tolerate humiliation, might take drastic steps to control the narrative, including secretly paying off witnesses or silencing reporters, but that could only create more tension inside the family as others, particularly Nick or Victoria, discover his schemes and accuse him of enabling Claire instead of holding her accountable. That kind of cover-up would only deepen the sense that Claire isn't trusted to stand on her own 2 feet, making her rebellion and self-destructive impulses worse.